Welcome everybody back to Friar Talk. Today, we're going to be talking about some catchers that the Padres could potentially trade for. Currently, right now, we're watching Padres Reds. It's 1-0 eighth inning. But we're not going to do a recap for the series until tomorrow. So this is going to be coming out Tuesday night. And then Wednesday evening, I think like 5:30, 6 o'clock, we're going to be doing a stream on the series there. And then I'll have a Dodgers preview and some other stuff out later this week. But want to talk about some catchers because, as we know, Austin Nola has not been cutting it at the catcher position. So figured let's look at what the Padres could potentially look at and explore in the trade market. Just because if we're looking outside of pitching at this Padres team, there's not really another spot you're going to be trading for. Catcher is the only position I feel like outside of maybe a relief pitcher, maybe a high-end starter if you can find one that you're going to be going after. And to be honest, there's not many options. So figure we'll look at this. The four names I think that they could potentially trade for, and some of these are big names, some of these are not. You got Salvador Perez. He's on the Royals. The Royals suck. You got Tyler Stevenson on the Reds. The Reds suck. You got Danny Jensen. Danny Jensen's on the Blue Jays. He's kind of their backup catcher. He doesn't play a lot, but they could potentially bring him in. And then they have Yasmani Grandal as like a very unlikely option, but he honestly might get DFA'd. He is on the White Sox. The White Sox, I don't know if everyone listening knows, but they're having an absolutely embarrassing season. They've been kind of a letdown the last couple of years, and now this year it's all falling apart, and it's bad right now in Chicago. So he could be on his way out soon. He legit has been playing so bad that he could get DFA'd, and he's probably cooked at this point. He's 34. But kind of looking into these guys real quick, I'll go over them and then we'll kind of discuss. You guys let me know if there's anyone that you actually want the Padres to trade for in this, because I don't know. I don't know how I'm feeling. So I'll start with Yasmani Grandal to just be quick. Everything on his Baseball Savant page is blue, and most of it is very blue and really close to like 10 percentile. Right now he has decent numbers. He's hitting 750, has a 750 OPS. Last year he was really bad. He played 99 games and had a 570 OPS, and he's kind of been up and down, but it seems like he's kind of falling apart. Now maybe this is a guy that the Padres trade for and are kind of like, okay, this is a reclamation project. The only big problem I have with doing that is that his pop-up time is 1 percentile. And we have seen that Austin Nola having a weak arm has killed the Padres. I don't think that's really a move that you want to make. Danny Jensen, the other backup, he's interesting. His pop time is like 40 some years, 70 other years, so it's kind of decent. I said he's kind of been a backup. Last year he played 72 games. Year before that he played 70 games, 770 OPS in 2021, 855 OPS in 2022. This year he has a 620 OPS, but that will go up a little bit. He's hit 11, 15 home runs. So this is a guy that could potentially be an upgrade, and you could Chase, you were talking about this before we got on, but you kind of thought that potentially you have him hit against righties and you have Campy hit against lefties and kind of have a platoon like that and kind of get rid of Nola. So maybe they go after him. And then Tyler Stevenson, he's been on the Reds. He's a good hitter, not the best catcher. He has pretty terrible framing, but his pop-up time's like 70%. So decent pop-up time. Just the framing's not really there. But his year, he has a 670 OPS. Last couple years, around 800 OPS, and then in 2020 he had 1,000. Now he has a few years left of control, so you could trade for him, and he could kind of be your catcher with Campy for the next few years until Ethan Sauce comes up. So you could take that route, and then final guy we'll bring up, probably the biggest, definitely the biggest name on this list, Salvador Perez. Now Salvador Perez makes $20 million for the next 3 years. So before getting anything, that's going to be a no from me just because he makes that much money. And defensively, he is atrocious. He's probably going to turn into a DH in the next couple of years. Now, I could see the Padres trying to make a big move and look at this like, hey, he's going to be a great bat. In 2020 and 2021, obviously 2020 is a short season, but 980 OPS and then 860 OPS in 2021. So he's been good offensively, but he's just really old. He's been playing since 2011. So this is his 12th season in the league, and it feels like he's starting to fall apart, and he's probably going to be a DH. So out of those four guys, Chase, you started off. We got Salvador Perez, Tyler Stevenson, Danny Jansen, and Yasmani Grandal. Are there one of those guys that you would be interested in for the Padres to go after?
I know we were talking about it before the stream, but I think the only option really is Danny Jensen. I mean, I think he is the perfect guy to slowly introduce Campusano into the league. I know Campy's hurt right now. He hasn't really been playing. And when he was playing, he was starting to slowly get hot. And if you wanted to like introduce him into the league properly, Danny Jensen's the right guy to do it. He only plays about 70 to 75 games per year. He slugs against righties pretty well. I think the last 2 years he's had over an 800 OPS against righties, which is great. And then you can slowly introduce Campion against lefties more and more, and then slowly introduce him against righties. Or you can't really do the opposite. When you're looking at Danny Jensen's stats, it's kind of interesting to see. He kind of flip flops some years where really good against lefties one year, and then he doesn't do so well the next year. That's one of the things I was looking at when he was looking at his splits. So he kind of hits the same, both home and away. I guess that's another thing that's kind of good for the Padres. His defense is probably going to be a little bit better than Campy. So I just think, Yasmani Grandal, he's at the back end of his career. He could be playing like crap because the White Sox is a abysmal organization right now. They're having some sort of breakdown over there. The team is not there. Tony La Russa can't hold the team together. The team is not giving any effort whatsoever. It's a mess over there. Tyler Stevenson, his thing is, yeah, he has a high OPS, but he plays for the Reds, the Great American Small Park. We've seen hitters come and go pretty well over there. So Danny Jensen it is, because Salvador Perez is not even an option in my book. $20 million for a DH, basically, when we have 2 DHs. No, I'm going to pass. And plus, like I said, Danny Jensen plays 70 games a year. That gives Campy plenty of games to develop behind the plate and develop his bat at an MLB level.
I mean, the way I see it, it's more of we don't need that massive of an upgrade. We don't need to go crazy. We just need to get somebody that can take turns with Austin Nola or Luis Campusano that has better pop time, because the problem earlier in the year, maybe up to this point, is that the Padres were getting bullied on the base paths because you got guys in the rotation that are slow to the plate, and you got Austin Nola, who doesn't have the best pop time in the MLB. He's probably one of the guys that are in the lower percentiles because he doesn't get the ball there fast enough. Guys were stealing back, left and right off Austin Nola. And it became a really big issue to the point where, it seems like fans were getting super annoyed with how easy it looked for the other team to take that extra bag. And it even put the Padres in a lot of really bad situations. And against a team like the Diamondbacks, they were taking full advantage of it. And there was another team that was taking pretty big advantage of it as well. But it's not like there are many slow teams in the division. The Dodgers are a pretty quick team, or at least they were up until some injuries. But yeah, the way I see it, I like Stevenson, I like Jensen, I like all the guys you said, except for, or well, I guess only 2 of the guys you said, because Perez is a lot of money, and I've never been a big fan of Salvador Perez. I don't think he helps us out defensively. I've never been a big fan of I like Grandal, but he's getting on the older side. Stevenson, like Chase said, it's a little bit of a mix because he does play in a very small ballpark. His numbers aren't the best right now. The Reds suck right now. The power is down for Stevenson compared to the past few years. Maybe that's the kind of thing where the Padres look at him as a buy low candidate and think they can fix him. But Padres don't really have a history of fixing people. So either way, though, the way I see it is you just got to get Austin Nola off the field as much as possible. And it's not really just the defense that's affecting the Padres right now. It's his production at the plate is horrendous. Like, you got Brett Sullivan putting up almost similar numbers to him, and Brett Sullivan, you don't expect him to be on a major league roster. He looks catcherish, he looks hitterish, but he's not going to fit the bill, that he's not going to fit the role the Padres need right now. And I feel like the fact that he looks and feels the same as Austin Nola at the plate and behind the plate, it's a really bad sign for the Padres. And it's really unfortunate for Campusano to go behind, or to go on the IL at the time he did, because he was looking good. I thought he was looking good. I thought he was hitting okay at the plate. Plate discipline kind of sucked, but he looked good behind the plate. He looked good at the plate, and we're hoping to get him back soon. We don't really know when to expect him back, though. And so hopefully of course, we want him healthy soon. But up until then, rolling Austin Nola out there every day is kind of hurting us. And that was kind of the same case in 2021 when Victor Caratini was being rolled out there every day. Maybe not as bad, maybe not to the same extent. Nola is honestly probably worse than 2021 Caratini, but I don't really know too much about Stevenson and Jensen. I saw Stevenson's stats. They're not the best this year. He's negative in WAR right now, at least on Baseball Reference. But the baseball savant numbers aren't that bad. There's some blue, but there's also some like light red. There's a little bit more red. So it's nothing bad. I think there should be some positive regression in his near future. Power is down for him. So I think as soon as the power starts coming in play, you'll see a more productive Tyler Stevenson. And playing in Cincinnati, I think that helps when it comes to getting his power numbers back up, at least on the stat sheet, because maybe in other ballparks they won't be out, but at least in that one, slugging percentage might go up. But as far as Danny Jansen goes, I know he was not a hot commodity, but he was getting talked about kind of a lot over the offseason, at least when it comes to the Padres, because it feels like people knew we had a need for some catchers, and he was kind of being talked about a lot. And that's just because the Blue Jays it doesn't really feel like they have a need for him, and the Padres do. So I don't really know too much about the Blue Jays' plans with him or what they think of him, but of course, that's going to be someone that the Padres should look into going after, because I think there's some potential there for him to be a pretty solid piece for the Padres. But overall, the main emphasis is get Austin Nola off the field as much as possible. As much as I hate to say it, as bad as I feel saying it, he doesn't help the Padres right now.
I even felt like, obviously, like we kind of had high hopes when they went and traded for Austin Nola to begin with. And it clearly has not worked out. But even like last year, there was still value for Austin Nola. He was still at the bottom of the order. He was hitting a decent clip, and teams weren't running as much. That wasn't an issue. And it felt like he was calling games. He had a good flow with the pitchers, and it was just him and Alfaro, and Campy wasn't ready, and Alfaro had decent moments. Like, it didn't feel like the catcher position was such a weakness as it's felt this year since Campy's been injured. I mean, and when Campy's not been on the field, because Campy's been all right. Like, and I also don't want to act like Campy's been like some like ridiculously good catcher. Like, he's definitely had his issues, but it seems like honestly, to me, it seems like you'd rather take the lumps with Campy right now, continue to rock with Campy, and maybe trade for one of these guys to be a part-time catcher. I don't even know if it's worth it to trade for any of them, though. That's the thing, because with Salvador Perez and Yasmani Grandal, like, those guys could 100% get moved. Absolutely, a team would go, like, they'd be fine with entertaining an offer for those guys, because those teams are not good and they don't want to have those guys under contract. But they're not good anymore. Like, that's the problem. So you're kind of just eating money and taking a big swing on an older player that's not very good. So I have no interest in going after those guys. Tyler Stevenson has quite a few years of control left, and I think he would cost a decent amount just because he's put up solid numbers. He hits pretty high. He hits pretty close to 300 most years, and he's a catcher. Like, not a lot of power, but at least he has a decent contact hitter. But the real question is Danny Jansen available? Because the Blue Jays have him as their backup catcher. They also have Varsho. I mean, it seems like Varsho is going to be primarily an outfielder. And then I don't know why Alejandro Kirk is the other catcher who's like their primary catcher. So they have a bunch of guys. Maybe they really want to have Danny Jansen as a backup, but the Padres could potentially offer them a starter, one of their back end guys right now in the rotation for him, drastically improve the catcher position and kind of work with it that way, with the idea that you're probably bringing in another arm. Where it's like, okay, we have too many starters, but since we traded for a Corbin Burns or someone like that, right? Like, this is dream scenario, of course, but like something like that, and then they move one of their depth pieces, maybe some prospects, for Danny Jansen. He has 2 years, including this year, he has 2 years of control left. That's kind of the only option I see right now. So that's all I got. I don't know, Chase, Isaac, anything else you want to add to this discussion?
Yeah, I know Isaac was saying, it kind of feels bad to say it. Like, Nola's been hurting the team more than he's helping. He's had his moments, but at one point his power doesn't play. His game calling just isn't enough. Like he said, the Diamondbacks are running all over us. I remember, I don't know if it was last year or the year before that, we were playing the Mariners, and the Mariners literally killed us just because they stole every single bat. They'd steal second, then they'd steal third. Another guy would get on and steal second, and then a single, 2 runs scored because of their speed. And Austin Nola could not stop the running game. We lost legitimately just because the Mariners could steal every bag they wanted to. And it's kind of, every time I see you guys steal a base, I just think back to that series where, yeah, if we had a guy with decent pop time, or if our pitchers weren't so slow to the plate, we would still be in this ball game because they were able to get into scoring position so easily. I love Nola. I love what he does behind the plate, but at one point, you know, it's kind of time to pass the torch on to Campy. Not saying that Nola can't be a productive member of this team. I think he can. I don't know if he wants to try playing out his career somewhere else other than the Padres, but I'd love for him to come back as a coach and kind of pick Campy up defensively and then let Campy work himself through a bat. I mean, he knows a lot about the game. Catchers are one of the smartest positions on the field, or usually some of the smartest position players on the field, because, you know, they have to call a game, they have to pick up hitters' tendencies, you know, they have to deal with cutoffs. They got to deal with so much more than the average position player. So him coming back to the coaching staff would be great for Campy, and probably just great for the team in general to have that knowledge still in the dugout. So hopefully that's an option that the Padres look into. But yeah, I think that's it for me.
Yeah, not much, man. I mean, I feel like even in the playoffs last year when we were playing the Mets, Lindor and Marte were kind of, it felt like just abusing Austin Nola, or the Mets in general. I feel like they were taking quite a bit of bags, and correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if I'm the only one who felt that way, but it's just kind of a feeling of insecurity knowing Austin Nola is back there with guys like, you know, potentially when you go to the playoffs, Lindor, Marte, Mookie, like a bunch of guys that can steal a lot of bags and can make it look quite easy, especially when facing a guy like, or, you know, going and stealing off a guy like Austin Nola. I think that's where it's going to come to play, especially this year. Jorge Alfaro had a pretty good arm, so maybe like the issues weren't as magnified as they are this year. Also, the bags and the new rules, it didn't feel like this. But now that, you know, we've seen what's gone into play so far this year, I mean, it feels like a pretty big need. And, you know, AJ probably is going to explore how he can make it maybe not a strength, but at least not a weakness. But yeah, man, I don't really have much to say other than that. I mean, it seems like everyone kind of knows. It seems like everyone kind of knows what the Padres have to do, and that's, unfortunately, I feel bad to say it because, like, I like the guy. It's not that he's like some sort of villain in San Diego or something. He's not Eric Hosmer, but but you know, you got to get him off the field, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, speaking of playoff teams that you might have to face, could you imagine him facing the Braves with the way Ronald Acuna has been running? Ozzy Albies, they got a fast team, and having guys in scoring positions for, you know, Albies, Olsen, Sean Murphy, Austin Riley, and then having guys that can just put themselves in the scoring position. Not going to like the way that looks in playoff baseball with Nola behind the plate.
No, and Isaac, I think it was you that asked earlier about there was a couple teams that like you felt like Arsenal was just running on. Dude, the Braves were one of those teams. The Braves and the Mets. And the Mets this year too, not just the playoffs. It was bad in that series.
They abused them, yes.
Yeah, so and I think that was that, and then that was also the night when Campy had was like a 3-hit game or 4-hit game. And it was like, and then we had like just the day before seeing the Mets running all over. Nolan was like, dude, this is like the turning point. And then Campy went down with injury a little bit after that. So I think that's the case. It's just tough because all of a sudden teams are running a lot more, and the Padres have a guy that was okay at catcher last season, but it's just it's not you're at a major disadvantage if he's your catcher in the playoffs, and that's an issue. But another problem is that there's just really not many guys to trade for. Like those guys that we brought up, those are the best names we could find that would actually be on the market. Because there's other guys, and like, of course, ideally you want like one of these top end catchers like a JT Realmuto or you know, an Adley Rutschman or a Sean Murphy, and that's why we wanted Sean Murphy. But You're not getting any of those guys now. There's a 0% chance that they would get traded. So when you're looking at actual guys that could get moved, it's an ugly list. It's a really ugly list. And I know people are going to comment this because every time we talk about catchers, whether it's on a stream or whatever it is, there's always a question of like, they bring Solace up. Solace cannot get brought up yet. Solace is years away. So you have to pretend that he's at the very minimum like 4 years away to even making an impact on this team. If he does anything else in 4 years, I mean, 4 years is not the expectation, but if he does anything else before 4 years, that is unbelievable. That is unbelievable if he's able to accomplish that. So I wouldn't expect anything for like 4 to 6 years plus from Solace. So yeah, I think that probably does it for this episode. But if there are any other catchers that you guys are like, hey, what about this guy? You know, maybe he could come up, make an impact, something like that. Or you have thoughts on the current Padres catcher room that, you know, some stuff that we didn't bring up with Austin Nola, Campy, and also maybe Brett Sullivan is, you know, intrigued you. Let us know. Let us know in the comments. So I think that's going to do it for today. But thank you all for listening. And we will be going live tomorrow evening, Wednesday evening after the game. And then the day after that, we will do a Dodgers series preview as well. So we'll talk to y'all then. But have a good night. And right now it's the 9th inning and the Padres are tied 1-1. So hopefully they're able to get the dub. But we'll see y'all soon. Later.